60 billion, and that is expected. That is what is planned. Both things imply that it is not possible to bring the cost of living under control. Third point to make, experts agree we are in dire possibility, we are in debt distress, and the risk of debt default is looming, and all those things show that, in fact, we are on a terrible trajectory. Is it only against the dollar that the shilling is losing ground? That's a chart that shows you what has happened to the shilling in relation to the Tanzanian shilling. If you just go back to the slide, what you'll notice, we're moving from, again, a similar kind of depreciation of the Kenya shilling against Tanzania. So that the argument that this is a global problem is not exactly global for every, what individual countries are doing has a lot to explain the cost of living for their citizens. Now, management of public finances is, honorable members, fairly straightforward. You make spending plans. Those spending plans need to be financed. So either you are taxing to get money to finance your budget, or you're borrowing. Usually, you're doing both. What is the issue? Why is it difficult to bring the cost of living under control? Because the tools that are being used today are blunting economic activity. They are eroding confidence. Again, going back to why is the stock exchange performing so poorly? It is leading to the flight of capital from the securities exchange, and the mix of taxation and interest is not working. The big headline point there is the budget deficit of 768 billion this year, anticipated to be 760 billion next year. Where do you get that data? From the budget policy statement and the midterm expenditure framework. Those are the same numbers in a slide. What you will see there is continued increment of government spending, and if the committee permits, economists think about cost of living or inflation as too much money chasing too few goods. So if you want to bring inflation down, then you have to slow down on expenditure. You don't accelerate expenditure. Now, what the combination of policies is doing is to increase expenditure. Yeah, and you are increasing that expenditure by borrowing. So you are suffering a double whammy. Of course, you will ask us, how then can you reduce government expenditure? What can you do? Well, first of all, eliminate corruption and theft of public resources, eliminate waste, inefficiencies, and imprudent use of public resources. To give you an example, last financial year, last quarter of financial year, so June, May, April, or May, April, June of this past financial year, 193.4 billion went to domestic and international travel. Compare that, for example, to what is expected from the housing tax, which is 70 billion. Meaning, if we did not travel, we may not have needed to collect the housing tax. You could have financed it by just stopping excessive travel. When you look at social protection, which is being reduced, when you look at the resources to counties that are not growing, all of those things could have been resolved if we avoided excessive expenditure. The other thing that happens when you're borrowing, the other thing that happens when you're borrowing is that, of course, you have to pay. So debt service, what is the issue here? The issue is that debt service is now 67% of actual tax collection. Okay? And that slide shows you where is the source of this data. Again, budget review and budget outlook, budget review and economic outlook, as well as the financial statement for this financial year. The point being can you really grow taxation by 530 billion, which is what is anticipated this year, and can you grow it at a time when the economic conditions are so poor? What is the effect of excessive borrowing? You squeeze out the private sector, and that is what that slide, again, from the quarterly economic review by Treasury, that is what it is showing you. That the spread, the difference between what depositors are being paid by banks and what government is paying those same banks to borrow that money, that's the spread, and what you see there, it is growing. The effect of it is to squeeze out the private sector. And I think FKE were before us, and they explained this point very strongly. This is what FKE was saying, that this, the Securities Exchange is now considered the worst performing. Not considered, that is what the data is showing, the drop being what is on the slide before you. Economic growth, because when you squeeze private sector to the corner, then there is no economic growth. And this is exactly what is happening. If you compare growth quarter to quarter, what you will find is that economic growth has flatlined. Yeah. So with the exception of the COVID recovery in 2021, when you look at quarter two, basically it has flatlined. We dig deeper in 2 slides. What really, this inflation or this cost of living, what's inside it, what is driving it? That's the way it is. Food and fuel. So the policies we pursue must address food and fuel costs. But this is the outcome of what has happened in the last 12 months. And you can see, again, this is a data and graphic from the Kenya Bureau of Statistics. Everything, with the exception of one item there, has gone up with percentages of between 7 and 60-something%. Same there with non-food items like fuel. What you will notice, in fact, this is 1 month old now. This is before the dramatic increase in fuel price this September. So those numbers can only get worse. I know we are fond of blaming international crude prices. That is not fair to anybody because it's not true. That is, and this data again, published by the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, that is the way crude prices are behaving. They are on average 34% lower than they were last year. So it cannot be that they are the reason fuel prices are going up. What is to be done? We must stimulate production by reducing interest rates. We must reduce taxation on energy, on fuel, on food, taxation to SMEs. It's the only way you can stimulate production. We must have a balanced budget. Some have argued not possible. It is possible. In 2003, 2004, 2005, you had a balanced budget and you were able to implement the items of Article 43, like free primary education, zero-based budgeting, and so on. I have to move faster. Finance Act 2023 should repeal it in its entirety. In any case, the broad policy point is reduced taxation. Next cluster of items, review of or audit of the elections. Now, first of all, the audit is not something being suggested. It is the constitutional provision, and you will find it in all those articles of the Constitution from 1, 3, 10, 81, 88, and so on. What kind of audit? Forensic and systems audit is what is required. Why? I mean, Kenyans, as a sovereign, and the Kenya National Human Commission just said the same point, the sovereigns deserve. In any case, audit is a normal process. Every entity of the state, counties, national government, parastatals, everybody gets audited. We must audit this process, and it is by auditing that then we can know what we are fixing. What is the problem that we are fixing with IEBC? So why audit? First of all, there are different numbers from the IEBC server, from the portal. And as you can well imagine, I have mixed feelings about Bomas, but we have different numbers. That's the way the numbers look. When you go by regions, when you aggregate the numbers by region, That's the way it looks. So we must audit. Number 3, numbers must have statistical validity and consistency. Now, these are the results from the Bomas portal. Now, elections happen, honorable members, in a polling station. So you could check candidate A, how many polling stations has she won? Those polling stations aggregate to an electoral ward. So how many wards has the candidate won? That aggregates to a constituency, and that aggregates to a county. How can it be possible for these results to obtain where a candidate wins at the majority of polling stations but does not win overall? We must audit these results. And remember that the IEBC, or the electoral body, for 30 years, 92 to now, with the exception of one general election, something has gone wrong. So we must dig deeper into what are the structural problems that bring this kind of statistical improbability into our life. If you put it in a map, that's the way it looks. Again, how can it be? We must audit the results to know what really went wrong. We want to show you a quick demo about what we mean by auditing the results. And co-chairs, we want to emphasize here that, you know, this is our country, all of us. And an institution that continuously is unable to deliver why we have created it, we must ask ourselves, why is it unable to deliver? This institution, we're just switching, we'll be back there in a moment. This institution, you will notice that the commissioners and the secretariat quarrel all the time. Even when you change the commissioners, you will notice that commissions also fight amongst themselves. You will also notice that the law seems to create unusual decision making, where a minority rule and minority view can prevail over a majority view because the chair happens to be sitting in that minority. That is not how decisions are made in the ordinary course of human events. We must audit. We want to demonstrate with one form, Barnabas.
Thank you. Thank you, honorable members. I just want to take like 4 minutes, not more. I've given you hard copies of some forms to check on, and we want to demonstrate something with them. First, you need to look at them and note that the prints are very small. Those prints are very small, but the signatures are there. That means people signed them, literally. So probably, did they even verify that data before signing on a hard copy format like that? When you look at them on the screen, one of the forms
with one form, Barnabas.
Thank you. Thank you, honorable members. I just want to take like 4 minutes, not more. I've given you hard copies of some forms to check on, and we want to demonstrate something with them. First, you need to look at them and note that the prints are very small. Those prints are very small, but the signatures are there. That means people signed them, literally. So probably, did they even verify that data before signing on a hard copy format like that? When you look at them on the screen, one of the forms look like that, and then I will give you another form now, which also looks like that. So these are 2 forms. If I click here, that's one of them, and then this is another one. Even by the size, you can see that they are all both the same forms. So looking at them casually by your eyes, they will pass for IEBC forms. One of them is obtained from the Bomas during the election results announcement, and another one is brought later on by the whistleblower who claims to work for IEBC. So we had to take that seriously and compare the two forms. So when we compared these two forms, we know that what authenticates a form in current technology, one of them is the barcode. If you scan that barcode, it will give you this value, which authenticates that that form, the barcode is correctly placed. When you come to this other form, and then you scan its barcode, also maybe on your mobile device if you decide to, then you will realize that it also gives you this. Apparently, the website that the barcode needs to point you to is pulled down and it no longer exists. So we have these forms and we were intelligent enough to pick them up while they were still online during the IEBC processes. The next thing that validates a form is the signature. A person cannot decide to sign a form and then later on be given another form to sign without explanation, especially if the forms appear to have some different content. So in other words, the people who signed these forms probably just signed once and took off. So how come the two forms seem to have the same signatures again? We have these signatures and we have that signature. This is Japheth Omara, and this is also Japheth Omara. The third thing that authenticates any form is the stamp. Anybody who stamps a form knows that they own that form, literally. So these two forms seem to have, again, the same stamp. But then let's look further. If somebody sends you inside to go check the content, you will take off and say, that's too much, I cannot do it. So we had to use another method of figuring out what the content entails. And so let me take you to what we did to confirm the two forms for you. What we did is we took the two forms and processed them, and then it had to take the results of all the 4 candidates that were there at that time. Then we realized that in every constituency, the Honorable Professor Wajakoya and the Honorable Mwaure, their data did not change at all. If he got 1 in this form, he got 1 in the other form. But when we checked on the other 2 candidates, that is Raila Odinga and William Ruto, we noticed that there were some changes that were beginning to show up in these forms. Remember, the IEBC whistleblower did not carry this process out. We carried it out as Azimio to check what really happened. Now I want you to look at the last 2 columns. The last 2 columns gives us the differences of the votes between the 2 forms. So, if you look at this Maroni Primary School, room 1, Raila got 245 votes and Ruto got 73 votes from the whistleblower's data. Again, Raila got 245 and 73 for Ruto in the Bomas portal data. That gave us a 0 for Raila and a 0 for Ruto. So, using that method throughout, we run through this form, and then we start noticing differences. We come to this particular station, and then we realize that here, in the other form for the whistleblower, Raila has 223, and Ruto has 134. And in the Bomas portal, Raila now has 123, and Ruto has 234. That you cannot even verify from that small thing form that is been given to you. Those fonts with the just row I you cannot even read them. But the system read them for us and gave us that. Then we scanned through and realized that there were some jumpy, fishy operations going on in some of these constituencies. So we looked at another one, and we saw here he has, Raila has 277 votes and 102. But then in the Bomas, now he has 77, and William Ruto has 304 votes. Now, when we take that throughout, we notice that in this particular constituency, Raila now has negative 550 votes deducted from him, and Ruto has 550 votes added to him. Now, let's confirm with just one form, and I'll be done. With just one station, and then I will be done. So let's get to this Gazi. Let's get to this Gazi primary school from these two forms. So I take you to them. The good thing with computers is that you can zoom and you can check, but the form, you may not be able to do that. So we have Gazi primary school here. In this Gazi, I guess it's this one. This is 223, and this is 134. But when we come to this particular form, and we go to the same station, which is Gazi, Gazi primary room 1. Now, Raila has 123 and Ruto has 234. The Professor Ojakoya and Maure, their votes remain unchanged. The other values also remain unchanged. That is the total valid votes. And also you note that the rejected votes were 7. So this is the consistency we have in all this. Just to check, this is the consistency we have in some of the constituencies, and other constituencies there is nothing that happened, and that is where the total votes that you see in the final analyzed result gives us 8 million in the Bomas in the server.
Point of order, Chair.
Yes.
When we listened to all the other presentations, we were strict on time. So far, this team has done.
I am done, actually.
8 minutes.
I am actually done.
It doesn't matter. People can heckle, can do what. Those are facts, and that's the truth. We were all guided. I'm actually concerned for them because, you know, they have 5 items to present. This is item number 2.
We are sufficiently guided. We thank you, Chair. Now, the next slide coming your way will just point to when we say audit, what is the tapestry, what does it look like to audit the elections results, so that we are quite clear that it involves not just the polling station results, it involves transmission, it involves the audit, involves the responsibilities of all state actors in the process. Now, it's only upon audit that you can actually reconstitute and restructure the IEBC, because then you know what it is that you're fixing, what went wrong, and therefore what are you fixing. Now, in reconstituting it, obviously, the various parties will want both the opposition and government side to contribute to this on a 50-50. When we say restructure, it's not just about changing the persons who are the commissioners. It's about looking at these institutions, as we said, on a structural level, and that involves, of course, the secretariat. We also think we must separate the election management and boundary delimitation for obvious reasons with boundary delimitation. The IBC and election statutes must also align to the Constitution, because the chair should not be a sole shareholder or a sole driver of the institution, the chair ought to be a first among equals. The role of the CEO should be in accordance with Article 250. We must also, of course, have enabling legislation for Articles 86 and 138. IBC should use taxpayers' money, so the elections fund. And there ought to be very stringent penalties for IBC officers, and this should be taken to personal responsibility so that we can have something that works. Of course, monitoring technology, not just by IBC, but also political parties at the polling station level. Political parties should be involved. There was a debate earlier about should politicians be involved. Political parties must be involved in the verification of materials. And also, there should be no statute of limitation on these when people shortchange the will of the people. So